Alrighty, let's install some sprinklers. Previously, I made a very detailed plan laying out the water and electrical systems. Now it's time to execute that plan. I started by placing flags at all the sprinkler locations. Then I took some spray paint and marked every trench that needed to be dug. Once that was done, I rented a trencher and got to work. I've never used one of these before, but did plenty of research beforehand, so I felt pretty confident going in. Let me just say that this thing kicked my butt. I had about 450 feet of trenching to do all in one day, and by the end, I was completely wiped out. This was the most difficult thing I've had to do in a long time. This trencher was not self-propelling, so I had to pull it backwards as it was digging, trying to go forwards. The ground here has a lot of clay in it, so I was in a full-on battle with this thing the entire day. I tried to dig down at least 12 inches. Some places made it difficult to get the full foot, but for the most part, I was successful in that. One by one, I started knocking out trenches. And in just a second, you can spot the exact moment that I found out I forgot to shut off the existing water lines. Right there. Did you see it? Yeah, that's the face of someone who is both relieved to get cooled off, but also doesn't want to flood his backyard. I shut off the valve that should have been closed anyway, and kept going. Now, the trencher reaches down, grabs dirt, pulls it up, and spits it out the side. But oftentimes, that side where the dirt spits out is directly into another trench. Pretty much anywhere that there's an intersection is a trench that was dug and refilled back in. So while the trencher does a bunch of work, I'll still have to go through and re-dig out the soft soil by hand. By the end of the day, I was done. So ready to give this trencher back and never see it again. Here are some of the spots that show just how tough this ground really is. Just solid clay. Installing an entirely new sprinkler system requires a lot of materials. This is just the first haul of the things I had to buy. I'll try to do a cost breakdown of the entire backyard remodel in the last video. I spent quite a bit of time re-digging out the trenches. They are 3 inches wide, and unfortunately there's no long shovel that skinny, so I had to do it by hand. I uncovered the 1-inch pipe that will begin the entirely new backyard water system. A little bit further down the line, I hit my first challenge. The new hose bib spot against the workshop wall was disconnected. No big deal, I just had to tie it back in. But there were 3 pipes there, and I had to figure out which one was the right one. I used the output on a vacuum to blow air into the pipe and be able to pick which pipe I needed because, well, it had air blowing out of it. I then connected it to the main water line and kept going. I continued to run pipe towards the sprinkler valve location and teed off the pipe to reconnect the water line that I burst while trenching. This reconnected line supplies a hose bib next to the gazebo. One thing I still needed to dig was the pit for the sprinkler valve manifold. I made this into a big area because it's going to turn into a large maze of pipe. Before tackling the valve manifold, I ran the pipe to the hose bib near the future greenhouse location. The pipe had to come out of the ground in a funky way because of the foundation for the wall. The valve manifold is really just a place with a bunch of T's and short pieces that supply the main water to all of the valves. It's kind of like adult Legos without a clear instruction book. At the end of the manifold, I ran a short length of pipe that will be capped. This is here for future expansion. There aren't any plans to extend, it's just nice to not limit yourself. The pipes were at a point where I could just flush the line to clear out any dirt or crud that got into it. I didn't open the valve to full power, just enough to get a small amount of flow. The incoming pipe is 1-inch PVC. Each T reduces it to 3/4 inch. So from each T, I added 3/4 inch sticks of equal length. I chose the length to have about 6 to 8 inches of pipe above the surface level. The inputs and outputs on the valves are threaded, so I added connectors that make it slip into the existing PVC. Each piece was wrapped at least 4 times with thread tape. A while ago, I replaced a broken valve in the front yard with the cheapest valve I could find. I highly recommend spending a few extra bucks on a quality valve that will last a lot longer and not fall apart right away. When all the valves were ready, I attached them to the pipes. Now, I have plans for 9 zones, but somewhere along the way, I thought the magic number was 10. So instead of 9 valves, I have 10 here. So one will just sit pretty, waiting to potentially never be used. All the valves are in place, the water main is set, so now it's time to do one zone at a time. I just started with zone number 1 and worked my way to zone number 9. I filled a bucket with all the different kinds of connections I'd need and kept it next to me as I worked. At each sprinkler spot, I used a 90-degree elbow to go from 3/4 inch slip pipe to 1/2 inch threaded pipe. I attached a cutoff riser to that and the sprinkler directly on the riser. For now, while I'm assembling, I just left the risers at full length. I'll come back later to adjust the heights and add tape to the threads. The process of completing zones took a lot longer than I anticipated. I thought maybe a day and some change to do all the zones, but no. Because of all the extra digging to clear out the trenches and how much pipe I had to run, I was really only able to max out at 3 zones a day. The valves have an option to manually turn them on, so at some point, I ran the first test without adjusting the throw distance or direction of the sprinklers.
Oh, Lord. It went straight up.
Right up to where you were sitting? Well, that would have been so good.
They're all the wrong direction.
Well, it's not set.
I know. Just funny.
Let's do those too.
Am I in the splash zone right now?
That's so cool. Now that all the zones are completed, I could go through and do some fine tuning. Each sprinkler needs to sit at a specific height relative to the grass. If it's too low, it could get buried. And if it's too high, it could get kicked and break or shredded by the mower. Both would be bad. The top of the sprinkler needs to be exactly flat with the top of the dirt from the sod. I cut the riser to the right height, added some thread tape on both ends, and screwed the sprinkler on tight. I also took this opportunity to set some rough spray directions. Along the left wall, there's a copper pipe that has been cut off and capped. I disconnected an old copper connected hose bib and swept my own pipe along the wall to add 2 new hose bibs. One next to the pergola and the other just before a slab of concrete down there against the wall. After all the sprinklers were set, I manually turned on each zone and really honed in the spray distance and direction to get full coverage. It's super important that every spot on the grass area can be hit by the sprinklers. The last thing to do for now is fill in the trenches. I started by filling in around the sprinklers, really setting their official, final, complete, last height. Then I filled in the trench part. I didn't fill in everything because next I'll be running electrical. This will bring automation to the sprinkler system and power to the gazebo and elsewhere. Stay tuned. Okay, that's it for now. See ya.